So, Adam, I want to talk to you about, and I don't know if we ever really did, how you got into working with Gail and Oprah way back when, because you went to where, like Skidmore or something?
No, I went to NYU,
Yeah.
and I have always been a magazine junkie. And I have worked at numerous magazines, many of which sadly don't even exist
But
anymore.
what'd you go to school for?
I did a double major in business and communications.
I love that.
And somehow I thought I was going to become Joan Collins' lawyer. So I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. I
Wait, stop.
know.
Come
Isn't
on.
that exciting?
Seriously?
Well, I loved movie stars. I do
Yeah.
movie stars. I love the entertainment business. And I
Yeah.
thought, I'm going to be a lawyer like my father. And I applied to school. I got into law school. I never told my parents. And then when I said I got into law school, my father was like, "You are not going to be a lawyer. You know what
Because
you're talking about?" He goes, "You are not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer.
he
You
just
go ahead
knew.
and do it if you want." I said, "Yes, I want to be Joan Collins' lawyer." And he's like, "That's called contracts. It's the most boring ass thing. You are not, if you want to go be Joan Collins' friend or something else, go do that.
It's the best
But
thing I ever heard.
doing contract and really," and I thought, "No, you have a law firm. I want to follow in your footsteps." He's like, "No, you don't. Go do your thing." And
Yeah.
honestly, it wasn't like I was even looking for that to get off the hook, because I thought, "Oh, I'll be a lawyer." And I'm sort of glad I didn't do it now. And I'm glad that one of my brothers did, but that is what I thought I was going to do. However, I kept postponing it because I kept getting these jobs in magazines, and I loved magazines. I love creative things. I love photography. And I was like, "Oh, I'll just postpone law school another semester, another year." And then I guess the writing was on the wall because it wasn't really cut out for me. Like, I don't have the brain of like my father, my brother, your son. That's not how my brain works.
I think also your motivation was not maybe right. Like the fact
Perhaps
that,
my
like,
motivation was really incorrect. I
yeah,
should
I mean,
be like an agent or a manager.
correct. Like the fact that it's so specific. I wanted to be Joan Collins' lawyer that I've never ever met anybody who went to law school because they wanted to be Joan Collins'
Joan
lawyer.
Collins,
Like,
I don't know. It was early '90s, and Joan Collins was big, and I loved all of those fabulous soap operas. I mean, really, I really should have just been like Joan Collins' costume designer or something. Nolan Miller. I could have
you
been.
would have been perfect with that. But Adam, so okay, so now you graduate college and so were you working during college for magazines
I
or was it
worked throughout college.
okay.
And I loved to work, and I was into photography, and I used to do all of these street scene photos. And that,
Okay.
at the time back then, you would shoot people on the street of what they were wearing. And New York and Saint Tropez and London and Milan were the places where trends emerged.
Sure.
Magazines used to buy my pictures because I would travel on
Ah.
my own, and I'd take all these pictures, and I loved it. And then, I don't know, in college, I got an internship. This is really how it started, at Donna Karan
There you go.
when she launched her collection. The first year of Donna Karan, and I was in the sales department. And I would always look down the hall, and I'd be like, "What are those people down there?" And they're like, "That's PR." And I'm like, "That looks fun. I want to do PR." And then
Yeah.
after that, I went into PR, and I'd be like, "What are these people?" And these are editors who came to meet with the PR people. And they were really the people in my mind that pulled the clothes and
Of
did these
course.
creative photo shoots and cover shoots and all that stuff. I said, "I want to be an editor." So I just worked my way to becoming a fashion editor. And that's was the beginning of it for me.
So when I think back to that, so that had to be sort of the mid 90s, right? Like early to mid 90s when Donna
The
Karan was
early 90s.
yeah. So
Early 90s, yeah.
was that the era of Patty Cohn who was
Oh, yeah.
Donna's
Patty, was Donna's right hand person in PR. I always loved Patty, still to
me
this day.
too.
So
What a nice woman.
a really nice woman, and it was literally one floor of 557th Avenue, the 14th floor. I'll never forget it. That's all it was. Donna would run around in a bodysuit
Uh-huh.
because it was all about like the easy pieces, 6 easy pieces, 7 easy pieces, whatever it was. And she'd just be in a bodysuit and then she'd be trying on a skirt and she'd be throwing on a pant. And
That's
she'd
right.
a baby llama turban. I mean, it was that year. Robert Lee Morris made all the jewelry. I have a very good memory here. And I was like a pisher. I was like a little intern, not being paid jack tiddly
Of
squat. I
course.
credit for it, which
Of
is
course. Yeah.
and it was super fun. And one day, I remember I was wearing. Do you remember this line, "Inwear Matinique," which was sort of big at the time?
I don't remember Inwear Matinique. Was it like
It
Go
was like
Silk?
it was sort of like Go Silk, a little bit like Go Silk.
Yeah.
And I had this jacket on, and she's like, "You, give me that jacket. That's the perfect color for my next resort." And so I
Stop.
took off my jacket. It sat on a dress form in her design studio for 6 months or however
Ah,
long. I never got this jacket back until way after. And that collection was about like cashew almonds and peanuts were the colors of that collection. And
wow.
one of them was based off of whatever this cockamamie color I was wearing,
Unreal.
Matinique of this blazer. I mean, it was like early 90s, so it was that look.
Charivari.
Yeah, Charivari. I worked at Parachute, and
Ah,
half of my friends worked at Charivari. That was another gig that I had during
I
college.
loved that
And
store.
that
Yeah.
is my era of stores
I please.
and retail. But I just loved what editors did. And then I went and I worked for a company called Kick It. You probably remember that. That was like all like sort of Jersey kind of
Mhm.
stores where designed by a man named Maurice Sassoon, who had
Okay.
originated Sassoon jeans originally. And I did PR there. And then I just kept moving my way, then I was like, I wanted to be an editor and people gave me jobs as editor. I don't know. And then I became editor of magazines.
But how did you get to go then to Oprah? Because she was in Chicago before the magazine launched at Hearst, right?
Yes, the show and Oprah were in Chicago. Hearst decided to launch a magazine. It's a very interesting story, actually. Well, I'll
It
tell
really is, and I don't think people
you.
know this.
At
Yeah.
at the time, I was working at Self magazine, and I
Mhm.
was
Under Lucy Danziger or not yet?
no, Lucy was not that yeah there.
Okay.
It was Rochelle Udell, an editor in chief I adored, and we were making the magazine a little bit more about body, mind, spirit than
Yep.
heavy duty fitness.
Yep.
And one day she's like, "Come in my room and let's watch this Oprah show." I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I knew who Oprah was, but
Of course.
who was and it was the Vogue cover shoots where Oprah had Anna Wintour on and Andre Leon Talley, I believe, and it was all about how she was on the cover of Vogue, asked to lose 20 pounds, never thought in her wildest imagination as a young girl growing up in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, that she could be on the cover of Vogue. And
Right.
we watched this thing in her office and cried. I remember crying with Rochelle. It was
I
like
bet.
so emotional and so interesting. I was like, wow. And then literally a few months later, I got this call from someone at Hearst who said, "We're launching this magazine. Do you want to come in for a conversation?" And I went in, and it was about the launch of Oprah Magazine. And we had a lovely conversation. It went nowhere.
Who
Fine.
was it with? Just an HR person or
And as
somebody?
a recruiter, it was a
Okay.
recruiter. I won't
Yep.
name names. It was fine. And it was a fine whatever. Then nothing came of it. And the magazine launched, and I bought it like everyone else. And it really was a magazine that sold out. It's in the history of magazines, no magazine has ever sold out on a newsstand where they have to go back to do a second print.
Yeah.
So I bought it and I'm like, oh, let me see what this magazine's about. And I was like, oh, it's nice. But it was, and I thought, well, there's a reason I didn't get this job. And it was meant to be because this is not what I thought this magazine was going to be.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
I remember having that fleeting thought, and that was it, basta così.
You were almost disappointed in that first issue.
Well, I was a little
Little
disappointed.
bit.
I
Sounds
thought it
like
was
you were.
perfectly lovely, but again, no one really knew what it was going to be. But like, I was at a stage of my life, I didn't need to read an article about sit under a tree and read a book. And I'm like, oh, it's sort of going in a little more mainstreamy kind of way about consciousness and whatever, finding your spirit, but like at a level that I had never, I was advanced from, so to speak. So I
Right.
thought, okay, fine. Cut to less than 3 months later, I got a call from a former editor at Vogue, and then she was at Mirabella, Amy Gross, and she said, "I'm taking this job at Oprah. Will you come in and meet with me?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Okay."
Sure.
And the interesting thing is, for many years, everyone said to me, "You need to meet Amy Gross. Amy Gross needs to meet you. You will get along like a house on fire." And our paths never really crossed,
Yeah.
other than when I was at Self, she was friends with Udell and Rochelle, and she did some stuff with us, and that was it. But we never really worked together. And I
Yeah.
came in, and she said, "We're blowing it up. The magazine was a great success, but you know, Oprah sees it in another direction." And Amy was in a silent retreat, and she had sort of left magazines, went to go do a silent retreat, studying Buddhism, and she got kind of sucked back
Back
into
in.
magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, I'm happy to try a few things." So I freelanced for like a month or so, and then one day, Amy said, "Could you come in and talk with Oprah?" I said, "Sure." I
Now,
went
when
in.
she said that, sure. Now, this is in the time when, and by the way, Oprah's always Oprah. So I'm not saying today she's not what she was, she's Oprah. But this was during the ABC show,
The
right?
height
Like,
of the television show,
this
yeah,
is the height of her
yeah.
fame. Like, not so when she, because I know in years when I've been in a room with her because of you, I'm like, I don't know what to say. And I've talked to everybody in the world, but I still go, it's Oprah. What did you
I
do?
didn't think about it. To be honest, I really didn't
You're
think
like, I'm
about
just
it.
going in and hanging out with
I
Oprah.
just went in because,
Oh my God.
certainly I grew up with Oprah on my
Of
television set.
course.
Mom had it on when I was back from school,
Of
and I'd
course.
seen it, and I certainly knew who she was. And so I sat in there and I brought a book. I did. I brought a book I put together of visuals of how I could see this magazine going in what
Yeah.
direction,
Wow.
how lush and full based on just what I knew about the show and her. And literally on the spot, she said, "So when are you starting?" I go,
Oh,
"Is this an interview?" I mean, and the funny thing is also, I said, and I see a lot of the fashion pages using real women. And she's like, "You don't want to use real women." She goes, "Don't you want models? And don't we want glamour? And should it be?" I said, "Well, real women could be glamorous
yeah.
too."
Yeah.
And she said, "Why are you saying this?" I go, "Because I look at your show and your audience is filled with real women. And they doll themselves up to come to your show. They wear bright colors. They do their hair, their makeup. They come
Yeah.
from all over, and they're of all sizes. And I feel it's important for people to see themselves in fashion just for a connection. Because, like, a skinny, white, young girl
Yeah.
relates to very few people.
Correct.
And there's nothing wrong with that in the world. But that, like, other magazines do it so damn well. And I just thought we should do real people. And she's like, "Okay, try it." And meanwhile, it resonated really well. And she
Of
called
course
me.
it did. It changed.
We're
By the
right.
way, that kind of seeing yourself, which
Yeah.
I know appropriately now, we know that that has to include people that look like all people. But
Of
back then, it
course.
was a very specific look that we saw on magazine pages. Always. It was always sort of
Always.
that Kate
Always.
Moss or
Yeah.
that lanky white, or maybe it went as full figured as a Cindy Crawford. Like, I mean, it was and I'm kidding because
I
obviously
know. But at that time, that was considered the healthy, full figured body. It
that
was
was it.
us, but it was like a curvy gal.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Cindy was still a size 0 or
I
2.
mean, the most beautiful, skinniest thing, but compared to Kate Moss, who was
Correct.
just
Correct.
a pole, it was a
Yeah,
different.
and also, like, ethnicity-wise,
Sure.
those were the days when people said, "I'd like an ethnic girl,"
Oh
and
my
what was
God,
that
it's so
code
crazy.
for? That was code for someone who wasn't, like, blonde and white.
Right.
Like, a Jewish girl could have been ethnic, or a
For
black
sure.
woman could have been ethnic, or a
Of course.
Latina girl.
Yeah.
So, I sort of cracked up about it, but whatever. But we
So you leave Self now, and is Self in
well,
the
no,
Hearst building?
at
Or
that
yeah.
point, I had just decided to go to House and Garden because I was like, I am done with lifestyle magazines and fashion. I love interior design.
Yeah.
And I signed a contract with
Oh,
House and Garden
oh
the
goodness.
exact day that I was offered a job at Oprah. And this was after many months of negotiating, and you know how these things go.
I do.
And literally that day, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I thought, I'm just going to call Dominique Browning, who was the editor in chief of House and Garden then, and
Yeah.
tell her the truth and just say, it came from left field, which it did. I know we've been negotiating for a long time, but I really think I should take this job. And she said, I really think you should take that job
I love that.
because
Honesty
if I was
always
offered
wins.
that job,
Yeah.
I would take it too.
Actually, the lesson in that is people always try to like change, like sort of work the message to suit the moment. And the truth is, just be honest. Like, if you're offered a job by Oprah herself in the moment and it all just kind of happens, of course you say yes. It's like you get into Harvard, you go. Like, you don't,
Of course, yes.
you go, you do it. So anyone who would question that or tell you not to, you would have broken the contract and maybe it would have been ugly, but the answer was already there. You were
The
going.
answer was there. It wasn't ugly. They were gracious,
Yeah.
Dominique was gracious as all get out. I still, to this day, am grateful to them.